I am not sure that this rises to a level of priority for me to support. I believe fiscal responsibility is the most important issue. I'm very focused on that. The budget, why should I prioritize this? Natalie?
You should prioritize this because we cannot ensure fiscal responsibility as long as there is corruption in our political process. So, additionally, the way we've been trying to ensure fiscal responsibility is largely through legislation, which can easily be overturned in the Supreme Court or rewritten. So, in my opinion, and as Wolfpack argues, this is the most urgent issue. Campaign finance reform has to come before anything else, because otherwise everyone is going to keep working against us. We will never pass any legislation as long as people are lobbying against us.
Dr. Lessig?
That was a boomer mistake. Sorry. Madam Chairperson, I can't add really anything of substance to what Natalie has just said. The reason you should care about campaign finance reform first is it will make fiscal reform easier. Because right now in Congress, they bend over backwards to make their funders happy. And making their funders happy makes it harder to have real fiscal reform. So when Congress passed the $1.6 trillion tax cut, a New York congressperson stood on the floor of Congress and said, "My donors told me that if I don't get this passed, I should never call them again." So there he was thinking about what makes sense to make it easy for me to raise money. Not what makes sense for fiscal responsibility for the nation or for any other issue. That will always infect the ability to do the right thing. And so fix this, and you can ask them to do the right thing.
Sure. All right, folks, cast your vote. Who do we think passes this round? Really good responses. This has been a really fun segment. I like it. I've enjoyed this.
So,
Mike, we're going 2 out of 3 here?
That was my question too.
Yeah, let's try it. Let's just see where we're at. Yep. We might have to just do, it's really going to be up to you guys what we need to,
I think we're okay.
We can cut into the closing ceremonies.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, initially, Steve Geller, Steve G, he worked on the outline for a lot of these segments this weekend, and he's a numbers guy, and he kept saying, "Don't have the time here." Do this. I just kept saying, well, that's why we did the half an hour in the panel before. We snuck it in there just to make sure we could try to do it, but we still didn't make it. So.
It's been remarkable how close to on time we've been this whole weekend. That's never happened before.
Yeah,
that's true.
Okay, so with 55% of the vote, Professor Lessig has prevailed in question 1.
All right.
He doesn't want to be in the fake house that John is in.
I think you can see the real situation. It's
no,
it's
on George Soros timeshare.
Okay, am I up?
Yes, sir.
Okay, question number 2. I've heard you say that there's historical precedent for using the Article 5 convention process. Can you elaborate on what you mean by that?
Yeah, so if you look across our history, conventions have scared the shit out of the existing powers in Washington. Whenever we've gotten close to having a convention, then Washington wakes up and says, okay, we need to do something to make sure we don't have to have a convention. So for example, after the founding, There were many who were talking about the need for another convention because there was nothing in the Constitution to guarantee rights in the way people thought rights needed to be guaranteed. And that then led to Madison saying, okay, look, we will just give you a Bill of Rights because we don't want to have to open up the whole Constitution again. And most recently, in the context of the 17th Amendment, which of course made it so the Senate would be directly elected, when they got within 1 or 2 states, Washington was terrified that if you had a convention, anything could happen. And so they gave the reformers what the reformers needed. So I want a convention, but I'll be happy if they give us second best by giving us real reform, real corruption reform without even getting to a convention.
Right. Thank you. Next up, Natalie.
It is true that we have never had an Article 5 convention to propose amendments. What has happened is there have been multiple calls for an Article 5 convention on a single topic, and Congress has felt pressured to act, and then they propose the amendment. So this has been the case for the Bill of Rights, as well as the 17th Amendment. We got, I believe, within 1 state before Congress proposed the direct election of senators. And we call this the prodding effect, which may be the likely outcome of our efforts. We may end up having Congress propose the amendment, but we need to put the pressure on them. It scares them when they are in a position where they might not be in control of the outcome. So if they have this fear that they're not going to be able to control the proposal of this amendment, then they might be pressured to act.
Right. Thank you. It's time to vote. Hopefully you'll see the poll appear on your right sidebar there.
I just want to point out, well, everything Larry said was 100% accurate. I don't want anybody who may be watching this to take the wrong idea that James Madison opposed the Article 5 convention process in general. He was very much involved in writing it. The idea of not going through the legislature was in the Virginia plan, which he had written, and he called for its use 2 more times in 1799 and in 1830 on other issues. He was specifically opposed to its use in the very, very broad proposal that New York and Virginia had done that called for a limited convention that was limited to about 100 different proposals, which went to the very core of how Congress would function, being taken up by a body other than Congress before they saw Congress working. So his opposition was to the policy, not to the process. He didn't want that process used for that policy at that time.
That's exactly what I was just going to say, Sam.
Thanks, Sam.
Word for word.
Right out of my mouth.
All right.
You ready, John?
So, 59% of the vote went to Natalie.
Oh,
This
boy.
question.
Wow.
And it was a damn near perfect answer, I gotta say.
Wow.
Wow.
Well done, Natalie.
Round 3.
Well done, both of you. This me?
This
Phil?
is to go to the finals.
Yeah.
Remind everyone.
Yeah, it's you, Leah.
Thank you.
I'm happy to have her teach my classes. That'd be totally fine with me.
Alrighty, my question for you. Why not just wait for the Supreme Court to fix it?
So the Supreme Court has not had a very good track record on campaign finance. You could argue they kind of got us into this mess based on some of their decisions. Some people have different opinions on the facts of different cases, but some of the high-profile cases like Citizens United and Speech Now versus FEC have resulted in more corruption. And so the only way we can go above the Supreme Court is to actually amend the Constitution. That's the only way to ensure that they have to do what the American people want. Just as for the same reason we can't do this through legislation, because it's easily overturned and we have to make sure that this will stick.
So Cenk and I sat with Robert Reich just before the last election, and we were pitching Article 5 convention, and Robert Reich said exactly those words. Let's just wait. Hillary Clinton will win. She'll appoint new Supreme Court justices, and they'll fix the problem. Now, there were two responses I felt when I heard that. One was strategically, I just thought that wasn't going to happen. But the more fundamental was, I'm so tired of elite constitutionalists, people who think that the only people who can touch our Constitution are lawyers or the very elite in our political community, that we need to keep it away from ordinary people. If we can't involve ordinary people in the process of ratifying changes to our Constitution, we don't deserve the damn Constitution. It has got to be a process that we're part of. And we are so sick of this corrupt system, all of us, more than they in Washington are. And so we need to rise up as people to demand that they fix the problem that they, including the Supreme Court, as Natalie said, has caused.
Thank you. Thank you both. Well answered, both of you. You know the deal, folks.
Fire there.
Whole time.
Larry's.
Yep. Larry brings the fire for sure.
I'm still burning from that breakfast that Cenk and I had. That was the most ridiculous encounter I think I've had in this fight.
The personal statements. It's very powerful.
Larry's definitely the saltiest.
If you're
And for those of you playing curse word bingo,
I apologize.
quite all right.
I remember the meeting that Ryan and I had, first meeting ever with Common Cause. And when we asked them what their plan was, they said, oh, the Supreme Court will fix it. Oops.
That's on for them.
I remember on Friday night, Grant and I were asking each other over text, like, can we swear on, video this weekend? Like, we never discussed this. And then Larry went on, and we were like, oh, he's setting the standard. So
A couple of years ago, I think Larry checked to make sure his daughter wasn't listening first and then swore.
She was listening.
All right, we got 83% of the vote saying that Professor Lessig has won this round and is moving on to the finals.
Wow.
Valiant fight, Natalie.
Great job, Natalie.
You did a fantastic job.
Honorary doctorate to Harvard, right there. Excellent job, Natalie.
Okay, who will go to the finals to face off against Lessig? Cenk and Sam, this is a very interesting matchup. Boy.
Oh, yeah.
This is great.
Who's got this one, Leah?
Got to enter my committee room.
I'm sorry? Is this me, Leah?
Yes, sir. You're up.
All right. So I got to tell you, I am absolutely terrified about a runaway convention. There's just no way to control a convention. So how can you ask me to support this resolution?
Yeah. So we have had hundreds of state conventions. They have not run away. The original convention was not a runaway convention. So every single state ratified that convention, every single one. In this case, we have the same exact situation. In fact, it's more stringent because in the United States Constitution, which did not exist during the Articles of Confederation, this is very clearly laid out. It must be ratified by 3/4 of the states, and you cannot get any radical proposal ratified by enough states on the left or the right wing side. And so in terms of running away on the issues or whether it can be limited or not, it most certainly can be limited. Otherwise, we would have already had a convention, as 49 states have called for one. So there's no question that it cannot run away. It must be ratified. It is the plain reading of the United States Constitution.
All right, thank you. Mr. Fieldman.
Thank you. Our founding fathers were brilliant, which is why they put together a system of federalism and of checks and balances. This separation of powers created checks that were beyond what they even themselves saw by giving portions of this process to the courts, to the Congress, to the states, and to the delegates themselves. They ensured that no one group can actually take this convention in a direction we don't want. If the delegates are voting for an amendment that the people don't want, that violates the restrictions that the states have put in place, the states have the ability to recall their delegates, to get injunction against their delegates using the judicial system. Congress would not send an amendment onto the states that doesn't follow the restrictions put in place. And of course, the most powerful check that the states have is the ratification process, the enormously high bar of ratification by 38 states of anything that comes out of this convention process. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. So we've had both our contestants go. Time to vote. I think everybody knows the drill by now.
I love this. I wish we could get the whole country not only to watch this Zoom, but to do it themselves, right? I think a lot of us have been dreaming about that for a long time. One day.
Mm-hmm. I have to say that there is nothing that I found more empowering than testifying at a committee hearing. There's nothing that I felt like I was finally getting my voice heard. So if you have a chance to do that, please do, because and it doesn't matter if you stumble through your answer. It does not matter. It is still empowering to make sure that your voice is heard at a committee hearing.
Yeah.
In fact, it often helps to stumble through your answer because they see how authentic you are and that you're not a professional who does this all the time. It has more impact sometimes.
Yeah, I think in Georgia, we, for some reason, specifically for resolutions like this, we don't get a committee hearing. I have to look into the details to be sure about that, but that's what one of our legislators told us, and I'm kind of disappointed because I think it would be fun to go through the process.
Natalie, email me. I'll look through the rules and help you figure that out.
I will.
So it was dead even for a little bit, but at the end, looks like Sam's coming out ahead on this one with 55%.
Very close.
I do have a 10-minute version of that answer that I like better.
All right, Leah.
Well, so Micah, is it all right to ask questions? Are we wanting to stick specifically to the Article 5 process and the questions around that?
Any of those, you can even use the ones that went early on in the first round, whatever you want to do.
So I've heard the arguments in support of or against Article 5 calls, the call for this particular topic. I don't have a question about that. My question is, why should I advance a piece of legislation that will impact our Constitution, the most sacred document of the United States, that's being supported by a fringe PAC group? What is Wolfpack? Who is Wolfpack, and why should I vote for something that they have written?
Okay, so 3 parts to that answer. First of all, the parts that we cherish most about our Constitution are actually amendments. That is what is great about the Constitution, is that we are allowed to and encouraged to amend it. That is why it has become the great document that it is, including the Bill of Rights, the First Amendment, et cetera. Second of all, in terms of Wolfpack, it is just average Americans. It's a nonpartisan group. There's no big money behind it. It's all $10 at a time from folks all across the country. It is a wonderful group. But third of all, what is really important is that Wolfpack does not write the amendment. Both Republicans and Democrats go to the convention and they write the amendment together. It is transparent. If they do not agree, it will not pass the convention. It cannot be extreme in one direction or another. Otherwise, it won't pass the convention. But even if it did, then it has to be ratified by 3/4 of the states. So Rhode Island and Nebraska are not going to agree to something that is radical on either side. And that language will have nothing to do with Wolfpack.
Thank you for your response. Sam?
Madam Chair, you've been called to action by our founding fathers. They wrote this process that gives authority to the state legislature, to legislators like yourselves, to call for an amendment to this U.S. Constitution. It's the first path. Before they even had the idea that Congress should be able to propose amendments, James Madison wrote in the Virginia plan that there should be a path to amend the Constitution without the assent of the national legislature. You have been called upon to take this action, and similarly, I have been called upon by the first words in our Constitution, we the people. All these people in this committee hearing with me, we are ordinary people. We have just a handful of actual employees in Wolfpack. We have 50,000 volunteers, and we have polls of 90% or more of our nation behind us on this policy. Our founding fathers have called us, you and I, to take this action to fix our country.
Thank you for your responses, gentlemen. A little bit different of a question, but well done, both of you. Audience,
Cenk was so fired up, he went on a turn.
I appreciate that.
He's like, I'm answering this question. I got this.
Sorry, and you're welcome.
So I'll fill up the time a little bit and tell you guys a story. And Mike will remember this. This was back in 2016 when we were at a committee hearing for the New Hampshire resolution. And we were before the Senate committee. And we had a volunteer that we had not prepped. And she showed up to the hearing, and she went forward. And she had her testimony on her cell phone. She was shaking. She was so nervous. She was dropping her cell phone on the table because she was so nervous. And the chairman actually stopped her. And I'm like, oh no, what's happening here? And it turns out that she was from his district. And he was so moved that someone from his district had shown up to a committee hearing, and he could tell that it was not a lobbyist. That Mike can testify to this. He said it was the first time that a Republican chairman had left the committee hearing afterwards, even though there was another hearing right after it, to shake all of our hands and take pictures with that constituent, and said that he would help us advance our legislation based on that one person. So that's how powerful showing up to a committee hearing, even if you're not prepared for it, is.
Wow.
Awesome.
That makes me
know that one.
Because I get so nervous, like talking in front of people. I usually try to just memorize, like literally every single thing I'm going to say. I think I memorized my entire thesis defense, which took a very long time.
I encourage anybody that goes to a committee hearing, watch the legislators and watch what happens when they're in front of a lobbyist or in front of a constituent, because their body language changes, everything changes about them. And they are very more receptive to that constituent than they are to any paid lobbyist or anything that comes in front of them. So,
Larry, how does it compare to arguing in front of the Supreme Court?
So this is much better because you guys know the issues better.
So just with the results of that last poll, it was extremely tight. And Cenk at the last minute pulled out a win with 51%.
Wow.
Very
That was a new talking point I've never used before.
Oh, this is a real serious game here.
The mail-in ballots came in to save the day for me.
It's the red mirage.
Might have been some voter suppression going on.
I'm lost, Leah. Whose turn is it?
First.
Mine?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And Cenk, if you want to go first again, you're welcome to, but
Okay, no, all right, I'll let you go, Sam.
All right.
Go.
So at the end of the day, if we want to ratify this amendment, we're going to need 38 states. And there are not 38 blue states. There are not 38 red states. It has to be bipartisan. Do you believe that this is actually a bipartisan issue? And if so, why?
absolutely, Senator. Thank you very much. Whatever issue you find particularly moves you, whether you are terribly upset at the way Bloomberg is spending his money on gun control, or you're terribly upset at the way the NRA is spending their money on gun control, or any issue, the fiscal issues around the country. If you don't like the way a red state politician is not listening to their constituents and their and their voters when they're over 90% support on one issue, you are frustrated. Whether the language that you use is drain the swamp on the right or money out of politics on the left, it doesn't make a difference. Over 90% of the country on both the left and the right and in the middle agree on this issue, which is why it's the only issue that can get the enormously high bar of 38 states to ratify.
All right, thank you. Mr. Uygur.
Senator, I have great news for you. The country's very polarized on almost every other issue, whether it's immigration, policing, taxes, you name it. But this is the one issue where it polls above 90%, both for Democrats and Republicans. And you know this well, too. How did Donald Trump win the election? He ran against the swamp, the corruption in Washington. And the Republican voters loved it, and enough independent voters liked it to make him president. And on the Democratic side, what's the number one thing that they rail against? Is Citizens United. So there's no question that both sides, especially the electorate, the most important thing of all, your constituents, your voters, everyone gets the logic of this. As Bill Morris once said, it's like a batter going up to hit, and he gives the umpire $10,000. Everybody instinctually knows that is not fair. And it's not talking to the umpire, it's bribing the umpire. That is why all of America is united on this one issue.
All right, thank you very much. There we go.
I think I dropped the ball on that last one.
You should say that after the voting, Sam. All right.
I'd vote for Cenk on that one.
Time to vote. Time to vote.
Don't throw it. Don't throw it.
I mean, I'll take the win.
You're doing great. Actually, yeah. Here's how I know. The previous two votes were 51 and 54. Either way.
Yeah, this was tense. Good stuff.
It has been so cool getting to hear the heavy hitters of it all going at it. These answers have been incredible. This is really fun.
Now,
tiring.
Yeah. I will say we didn't know how it was going to work, but yeah, I think this has been informative. It's been fun. So thanks for participating. I know it's not over, but this is cool.
So to Larry's point, I don't know about the Supreme Court, but imagine Republican or Democratic leadership answering these questions. They would have no earthly idea. I'm not sure they know. Well, they know why they're actually opposed to it, but they couldn't say that publicly. So I'd be curious to see what they did say about it. By the way, guys, thank you to everybody watching. And don't hold this against me. I think the polling's closed anyway, but I'm going to ask you to contribute. wolf-pack.com/go so we can make events like this happen and we could win across the country. Go ahead, John.
All right. Well, with a much more lopsided 89% of the vote, Cenk Uygur is moving on to the finals here.